Canada won't bow down to a bully. And we won't stand by as tariffs hurt our workers and their families. Trump wants us to lose our
Tensions
cool.
between the United States and Mexico are escalating dramatically over Mexico's plan to limit the use of genetically modified corn. Welcome viewers to my channel. Please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. This profound disagreement, now teetering on the edge of a formal trade dispute, is fueled by Mexico's deep-seated and persistent concerns about the potential health and environmental impacts of GM corn. The conflict goes far beyond mere commerce. It represents a fundamental clash of scientific philosophies, national priorities, and the very concept of food sovereignty. The two nations are locked in a high-stakes standoff with significant economic, political, and cultural implications that could redefine their long-standing relationship. This dispute highlights the complex challenges of balancing international trade agreements with domestic policy objectives related to public health and environmental protection. The ideological chasm over scientific evidence and national sovereignty. At the core of this heated dispute is a stark and seemingly irreconcilable difference in how the two countries view the science behind GM corn. Mexico recently made a good-faith effort to bridge this gap, proposing that the U.S. join them in collaborative scientific studies. The aim was to conduct thorough, joint research to better understand the potential health effects of GM corn on both animals and humans. This proposal, however, was met with a swift and decisive rejection from the U.S. government. This refusal has been a source of immense frustration for Mexican officials. Mexican Deputy Agriculture Minister Victor Suarez was particularly pointed in his criticism, noting that the U.S. did not want to establish a period in which the two parties agree to carry out impact studies on animal health and human health. Suarez's comments went even further, accusing the U.S. of treating its own scientific findings as unassailable truth, stating, "Their science is the word of God. That is not science, that is ideology." This powerful quote reveals the depth of the Mexican government's conviction that the U.S. is operating from a position of dogmatic belief rather than an open, inquiry-based approach to scientific knowledge. Mexico's position is that while the U.S. and other nations have conducted extensive research, Mexico has a right and a duty to conduct its own studies, particularly concerning the unique dietary and cultural role of corn within its borders. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, in turn, has responded to these accusations by referring to prior statements from Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack, who has publicly declared that the U.S. fundamentally disagrees with Mexico's stance on biotechnology. This back and forth illustrates a dialogue of the deaf, where each side is so convinced of its own righteousness that a cooperative path forward seems increasingly unlikely. The U.S. firmly believes that the existing body of scientific research overwhelmingly supports the safety of GM corn and that Mexico's concerns are not based on verifiable scientific evidence. For the U.S., Mexico's actions are seen as a non-tariff trade barrier, a violation of the spirit of the USMCA agreement, and a threat to a globally recognized agricultural innovation. The heart of the dispute, health, environment, and economics collide. Mexico's proposed policy is a comprehensive, multi-layered approach to phasing out GM corn, driven by both public health and environmental protection concerns. The most immediate and culturally significant aspect of this policy is the aim to completely eliminate GM corn for human consumption, especially in the production of tortillas, which are not just a food item but a foundational element of the Mexican diet and cultural heritage. This is a matter of national food security and cultural preservation. The government's plan also includes a longer-term goal of replacing the GM yellow corn currently used for livestock feed. The Mexican government argues that GM corn poses significant risks, not only to human health, but also to the preservation of the country's rich diversity of native corn varieties, which are a vital genetic resource. Mexico fears that the widespread use of GM corn could lead to cross-pollination, thereby contaminating its native landrace corn varieties and eroding centuries of agricultural biodiversity. Conversely, The United States maintains that Mexico's planned restrictions are not supported by any credible scientific evidence and would constitute an unwarranted and harmful barrier to trade. The economic stakes for American farmers are enormous. The U.S. annually exports approximately $5 billion worth of corn to Mexico, and the vast majority of this is GM yellow corn destined for animal feed. The U.S. government views Mexico's policy as a protectionist measure disguised as a health initiative, arguing that it violates the spirit and letter of the USMCA trade agreement. This difference in perspective is a classic case of trade liberalization versus national regulatory autonomy, with Mexico asserting its right to protect its food supply and biodiversity, and the U.S. demanding open markets based on established scientific consensus. The path to a potential trade dispute and Mexico's strategic maneuvers. The growing friction has already triggered a formal response under the U.S. Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, the trilateral trade pact governing commerce in North America. In a significant move in June, the U.S. officially requested trade dispute settlement consultations with Mexico. This was a crucial first step in a formal process. Canada, a key partner in the USMCA, has since joined these talks, underscoring the regional importance of the issue. The two sides have been given a deadline of August 16th to resolve their differences through negotiation. Should they fail to find common ground by this date, the U.S. will have the right to request the formation of a formal dispute settlement panel, which would act as an impartial body to hear the arguments from both sides and issue a binding ruling. This process could take months or even years to fully resolve and could have lasting consequences for trade relations between the three nations. Despite the mounting pressure and the looming possibility of a formal panel, Mexican Deputy Agriculture Minister Suarez remains remarkably confident. He has publicly stated, "If they establish the panel, we will defend ourselves. And if we defend ourselves, we think we're going to win." Suarez's confidence stems from his belief that the U.S. will be unable to present compelling evidence in a neutral forum to support its claims. He also argues that Mexico's policy, far from being a harmful trade barrier, has no negative commercial impact on the U.S. market, a claim the U.S. vigorously disputes. In an effort to further buttress its negotiating position and strengthen its national food security, Mexico is also taking concrete steps to bolster its domestic corn production. The government has set an ambitious goal to replace 10 to 15% of its foreign corn purchases with domestically grown corn by 2024. As part of this initiative, the government is strategically buying white corn from farmers in the state of Sinaloa at a fixed price that is intentionally set higher than the international market price. This calculated move is designed to break the price link with Chicago, thereby revaluing Mexican white corn and providing a stable, profitable market for its domestic farmers. This multifaceted strategy demonstrates that Mexico's stance is not merely a reactive measure, but a proactive and strategic effort to redefine its relationship with global food markets and assert its own agricultural independence. Mexico is effectively attempting to decouple its food supply from international market forces, a move that could have profound long-term implications for its economy and sovereignty.